The taxi skidded to a stop just short of the gravel driveway I hadn't seen in over a year. I stepped out, boots still coated with Afghan dust, uniform crisp, expecting to surprise my mom with an early homecoming and collapse into my bed for the first time in 11 months. But where our white cottage with green shutters and a porch swing used to sit, there was now a dog park, a fenced-in, barking mess of unleashed chaos. 2 Labradors bounded after a tennis ball through what used to be my living room. A woman in yoga pants glared at me as she yanked her spaniel away from my duffel bag. I thought I had the wrong address until I spotted the old oak tree I carved my initials into before deploying. Its scarred trunk stood alone in what used to be my yard. Only now, that yard had been swallowed by Cedar Grove Community Park, proudly sponsored by the Homeowners Association. A shiny plaque below it gushed about unity and shared joy. My heart pounded harder than during a mortar barrage. When I flagged down a jogger and asked what happened to the house, he shrugged and said the place had been abandoned and forfeited for unpaid taxes. Said the HOA repurposed the land. Then he jogged away, a way that the so-called deadbeat was standing right in front of him. Something inside me snapped, not anger. It's not grief. Just this cold, disbelieving hollowness laced with fatigue. I survived ambushes, led night patrols, pulled kids out of burning huts. But now, the enemy wore joggers and carried clipboards. I spent the rest of the day bouncing from one city office to another. No one had answers. Property records said the house was seized 6 months earlier due to tax delinquency. But I had filed the military exemption before deploying. One board clerk barely looked up before telling me to contact the HOA president, Susan Whitaker. Apparently, she took community standards very seriously. I found her in the community clubhouse, presiding like royalty over a wall of self-awarded plaques. A framed photo labeled Visionary Leader hung behind her. She was scolding a teenager about an illegal basketball hoop when I walked in. I introduced myself as the rightful owner of 214 Pine Lane. Her eyes flicked up. She gave me a smirk, polished, dismissive, flipping through a manila folder. She informed me that the property had been labeled delinquent and reassigned to the HOA. When I mentioned my active duty deployment and federal exemption, she cut me off. Maybe you should have thought about your responsibilities before running off to play soldier. The room went still. Her words hung like smoke. I cited the federal laws that protect service members from property seizure. She smiled sweetly and offered me a plot by the trash compactor. We can work something out, honey, like she was offering me scraps. I walked out. Her smug grin etched into my brain. That night, in a cheap motel room, I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, body home, but mind still at war. This wasn't Afghanistan. This was filthier. This was betrayal on my own soil, by people I'd gone to war to protect. By morning, I called Javier Morales, a buddy from my unit now working cyber ops for a federal agency. I'd pulled him from a firefight once he owed me. Within hours, he uncovered forged deeds, backdated HOA minutes, shady land transfers linked to Susan's brother-in-law. The HOA had fabricated a paper trail that said my house was abandoned. One email from Susan joked about flipping that grunt's lot and ensuring Cedar Grove stayed soldier-free. Another ended with, "If he ever comes back, I'll salute and walk away." Didn't explode. I focused. It had wanted apology. I wanted a reckoning. I remembered Colonel Marcus Reed. He once told me, if you ever need help stateside, call. I did. When I explained how my house had been stolen while I served overseas, his tone turned ice cold. "Send coordinates," he said, "and a list of their assets. Quiet or loud." I chose loud. The plan came together fast. Javier built a dossier thick enough to stop a tank, forged documents, zoning fraud, illegal expansions, protected wetlands turned into HOA facilities. Susan's emails mocked vets calling my home a shack. I pinned that line on the motel wall next to an old photo of Mom sipping iced tea on our porch. Then I met with Judge Clara Hensley, former JAG officer who hated civilian scams targeting military personnel. I showed her everything. Fake signatures, zoning violations, the sale of my land to a shell company owned by Susan's family, She called it a criminal masterclass. But she warned that the HOA's lawyers would drag any civil suit for years. I asked her if federal seizure for investigation was possible. She smiled. If it's tied to abuse of public service or security, it's very possible. I called Colonel Reed again. He proposed a military training operation, urban conflict. Simulation. Location. Disputed land at Cedar Grove. Within 24 hours, Operation Homefront was approved. My property and surrounding areas were reclassified for federal use as a tactical zone. We mapped every inch of illicit HOA infrastructure. The dog park, illegal clubhouse, even Susan's prized rose garden. Logistics teams plotted entry routes. 3 days later, Cedar Grove woke to the sound of diesel engines. Humvees rolled past pristine lawns. Soldiers pitched tents in the dog park. A black hawk hovered over the community meditation garden. Residents spilled out in robes, clutching coffee mugs. Susan came stomping out in silk pajamas, holding a mug that read Cedar Grove's finest. Her jaw dropped as engineers converted her clubhouse into a command post. She charged an officer, demanding answers. He calmly handed her federal orders authorizing temporary occupation and land seizure for investigation.
Ace.
She turned beet red, screaming about property rights. No one cared. I arrived in an unmarked SUV. She spotted me, stormed over. You did. This, I nodded. That land you stole. It's mine again. Inch by inch, she babbled about HOA charters. I asked when she last reviewed her actual property lines. She froze. Soldiers taped off her garden pool and clubhouse, every square inch built on stolen ground. She tried to lock herself inside, but the county had duplicate keys. Her wine fridge became an MRE cooler. Her living room became a map room. Residents panicked. Some waved protest signs scrawled on pizza boxes. Others called news crews. Few confronted officers but backed down after seeing maps showing their own zoning violations. An older couple brought me coffee. They'd lived in Cedar Grove since before the HOA. They said they hated Susan's rules but never spoke up. They offered photos of my old house and volunteered to testify. I thanked them. It felt like the tide turning. By noon, the media had arrived. Susan tried a press conference but collapsed under questions about the stolen veteran's home. The footage went viral. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag Justice for SG Ramirez and hashtag Susan Sinks. Javier traced 5 more fraudulent land grabs. IRS opened a probe. Federal agents started knocking on doors. A red sign went up. Restricted military training zone. Susan's empire was occupied. Her garden trampled by boots. Her clubhouse, a forward operating base. Drones buzzed overhead. Checkpoints blocked. Roads. Inside the command post, I reviewed records with a DOD official. It confirmed. The house was bulldozed without permit. Paid for with HOA funds laundered through Susan's brother-in-law. Outside, Susan tried rallying her board with a megaphone, but neighbors booed. A county officer posted an audit notice on the clubhouse door, officially dissolving the HOA. Cheering broke out across the neighborhood. Javier delivered the final blow. Leaked video of Susan mocking soldiers, joking about my home being razed, bragging about untouchable fraud. I sent it to every major outlet with one caption: I'm home. The clip exploded online. Civil rights groups offered legal aid. The VA condemned the HOA's actions. Residents demanded resignations. Susan's brother-in-law flipped, exposing a decade of embezzlement. 11 homes, including hers, were slapped with relocation orders. Susan tried to flee. Car jammed with boxes, reputation in ruins. I stood on the spot where my living room once sat. Soldiers had marked the new foundation. Rebuilding had begun, paid for by donations, the VA, and a new community fund. Neighbors brought food. Contractors showed up. Apologies poured in. Susan was gone. Cedar Grove was healing. Kids played freely. Gardens grew wild. A new civic group formed. Ramirez Clause Protecting Soldiers' Rights. I drove the first nail into the porch frame where Mom's swing would hang. The sound wasn't vengeance. It was rebuilding. They stole my home, while I fought for theirs. I came back, took it piece by piece, nail by nail, truth by truth. And this time, I wasn't leaving. Do like, subscribe for more stories.